What's up, grinders? So today we're going to be looking at this video right here, Learning Latin is a Bad Idea, Why You Should Not Study Latin in 2023. I actually was planning to review a totally different video today, but someone dropped this in my Discord and the comments that followed were quite hilarious. First up, everyone said I should, start from the 30-minute mark if I really want to do a review of this, so I'm not sitting here for hours. And the second thing that I saw was people saying that I'm going to have a field day reviewing this one, stopping non-stop. So I don't know how I feel about that, but it did, spark my interest. So I guess I should talk a little bit about my interest with Latin. Now, I have studied Latin a little bit before. I'm not proficient in the language. I did the Familia Romana. I didn't finish it. I've watched various videos on it, but overall, I have a real interest in it. It's just not a priority language for me right now. It's more like a bucket list language due to the fact it's had a big influence on Esperanto, etc., etc. But these titles, for these types of videos, why you should not study X in 2023, when it comes to things like languages, make absolutely no sense. What changed from 2022 to 2023? Latin has been like a dead language for like 1,000 years now. What suddenly happened in 2023 that means we should all suddenly stop, learning Latin? Maybe someone found, some ancient scroll which is all telling us that, Latin was this great big joke that was started by the Roman Empire to trick all the future masses into believing that this was a real language when really it wasn't, They were all speaking Hebrew, let's just pretend. But no, I don't understand these types of titles, but let's begin before I rage.
Over here to Cree, Ojibwe, Soto, Navajo, Nahuatl. These are hard languages.
I'm not sure, obviously where this started, this conversation. I've jumped straight into the middle of something here, but he is listing out Native American languages, and this actually is quite, coincidental, because literally in 2 weeks, I'm giving a speech at a language festival here in Sydney about Cherokee. I'm going to be talking about 30 minutes, and you might be thinking, well, do you speak Cherokee? No, I don't. I just have a massive, interest in Cherokee history, especially the evolution of its script, and just how that all happened. I just find absolutely fascinating. It would be a language that I'd learn if I had, unlimited time within my life, but unfortunately I don't. It's just funny that he's just, happens to be talking about something I'm going to give a speech on pretty soon.
And they're not just hard for you to learn, they're hard for these people to teach. So, if you do find an...
Yeah, that was one thing. When I looked into Cherokee, there's barely any groups online that actually, teach it. There's one Facebook group with a couple of proficient speakers in it, and they'll just they'll drop little Cherokee stories and stuff and a little bit of stuff here and there, but there's nothing online to really learn. A couple of websites.
An old grandmother in a small village who speaks one of those languages I've just named. Do you know how much you're imposing on her? You're not her grandson. You're not her, she doesn't know you. She doesn't love you. And even if you pay her, how can you pay her enough to do the really hard work of sitting down and teaching you a language, totally alien vocabulary, syntax, grammar, totally alien etymologies? So that's radically unrelated.
Well, if you're fascinated enough in a language and you're determined enough, there will definitely be someone who's willing, unless the language has only got a couple of speakers left.
To a Western European language. It may seem like it's all fun and games when you're, chit-chatting with people in a Western European language that has so much in common with English, and you think you can do these things informally. Okay, well, look, Beijing Chinese, Beijing Hua, it's not like that, homie. It's a totally different game with totally different rules.
Okay, I'm interested to see what he says about Chinese, considering the fact that I speak this language.
And totally different stakes, something totally different to win, and something totally different to lose, and people ruin years of their lives and lose huge amounts of money over this.
What does he mean? Different wins, losses? I didn't know this was a battle.
So don't fuck around in just giving people encouragement.
Okay, I've obviously missed the first part of this conversation, but it sounds like he doesn't like when people just give random encouragement. I don't know why that's a bad thing.
To learn a language. Okay.
By the way, also, let's say you spent years of your life learning a language, and then you've decided, actually that was, not worth my time. There was other things I should have done instead. You're still going to take away something from that, something of value. Now, obviously, I also say on this channel, learning a language is generally something you should do as a passion, because there's very few career opportunities to use a language, even Chinese. I'm not going to make any career opportunities out of Chinese, realistically. There's very, very few, things I could do unless I go to China and I get into the film industry over there. Which reminds me, that director still needs to contact me about that. I've got a director over in China I've been speaking to about doing a film over there.
Ultimately, the most important reason not to learn Latin is the type of person who learns Latin, and what your relationship to those people is going to be today, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years.
Okay, I'm not liking where this is heading because I've actually heard these exact same comments about Esperanto, a language I'm fluent in, where people are like, oh, you shouldn't learn Esperanto. It's filled with like left-wing lunatics type of thing, blah, blah, blah. And even if like, let's just say over half the community is of that persuasion, or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't make sense because that's a very American concept for one, and like Esperanto is a global language, and I'd say Latin for an extent has a lot of people that learn it from all different regions. I even know someone who studied Latin out of China, for example. So the whole idea, oh, you're gonna like mix in with a community that you're not gonna get along with, like Latin's massive. The community for Latin, like people learning Latin, you're going to find a lot of people. You're definitely going to find someone that you're going to, you know, become good friends with.
Now, okay, I'm in my mid 40s. I know I'm gorgeous. I'm in my mid 40s. I'm not young.
I wonder if this is the midlife crisis. Because I'm in my like mid 30s.
And the practice I have with so many other languages, the background I have in so many other philosophical traditions, historical traditions, political traditions, you know, so much research I've done in so many different fields. It is possible for me to do Latin, like frankly, in 1 year, but whatever. Talk about the next 5 years, next 10 years. It is possible for Latin to be rewarding and meaningful for me, working completely in isolation, completely solo. All right. Now, I would not even say that about Chinese, kind of a topic for another video. I definitely would not say that about Japanese, to give another example. So some people watching this video are...
Okay, this is one thing a lot of YouTubers do. They half get out their ideas and then they move on to the next idea before they've finished, you know, enunciating their first idea. He's kind of jumping between multiple things here, which I can't really string together. So that's probably why this video, you know, technically is an hour long. But if you're going to get on YouTube, you should like really think about what you want to say and like really focus in on those ideas and present them, because otherwise if you just do this whole ramble thing, you could be misinterpreted.
18 years old. Some of you are 55 years old, whatever, you know. It may be hard for you to reflect on and really be honest with yourself about what kind of positive role you're expecting these other people to play in your life in the study of this language. You know, so like if you're studying Chinese, having one other person who will write to you back and forth on Facebook Messenger in Chinese, encouraging you. Knowing just one person who's fluent in Chinese where you can say to them, hey, look, I'm reading this Wikipedia article and I can't understand this sentence. And they take the time to write back to you and reply. That can be crucial, right?
I'm not sure what he's getting at with there. Okay, so I speak Esperanto, which is essentially a minority language, way smaller than Chinese, another language I speak. So with Esperanto, it's actually easier for me to find people who are willing to help me in the language. And in fact, it's an inverse effect I've noticed. The smaller the language community down to a certain point, the smaller the community, the more of that community are willing to help complete random strangers learn their language. And I've seen this at all levels. So let's start with Chinese. I've had some people help me, but like not realistically that many beyond family members. So like in the general public, maybe someone will point out like a mistake I make here or there. And, you know, I've got Chinese friends, but like if I send them a message asking for something, they might respond in a day or so. But then when it comes to Esperanto, like there's multiple people that I can easily reach out to and they'll give me like answers, like full written out answers quite quickly about why it should be this way or that way type of thing. And then I go down to an even smaller language, which I'm acquainted quite well with, and that's Tokipona. That community is so small that when I even said online that I was going to learn Tokipona, I had people buy me Tokipona books. They went out their way to buy me Tokipona books. Now, I've had that for Esperanto, but like that was like pretty much straight away with Tokipona because it's such a small language. Just the fact that someone is willing to learn your language means that people are going to jump out of their like seats to help you, basically.
So I know all these fucking people, everyone my age and younger, they seem to be in denial about these kinds of social relationships. They seem to be in denial about the extent to which there has to be love and respect in the game. There have to be people you can reach out to with love and respect, and they can reach out to you with love and respect.
I feel like he's had some type of really negative experience, and he's not like actually telling us what that negative experience is yet.
People who are like 65 aren't fucked up about this. But I mean, I don't know whether it has to do with the internet or video game addiction. Also,
I don't agree with that statement, 65, they don't have these issues. I feel like people reach that point in life where they know what they want and they're able to understand, the desires and needs of other people at completely different points in life. Like when I hit my 30s, I had a pretty good understanding of like what I wanted in life, where I was going, the types of people that I wanted to hang out with. But I've met 50-year-olds who are still completely lost and trying to figure out what they want with their life.
Or like that people are addicted to different drugs now than they used to be addicted to. But something has changed in the culture where nobody wants to admit this kind of fragility, this kind of need. And it's not an emotional need. It's an intellectual need, right? Of course, there's emotional ramifications. But, how depressing is it to be struggling to study Chinese alone, where there isn't even that one person you can send a Facebook message to saying, hey, I'm struggling to read this particular sentence. Okay. Now, by contrast, what if you're living in a situation where you have all kinds of warm, effusive, encouraging participation in your process and experience of learning Chinese? So I didn't meet this guy. I'm sorry if I've told this experience before, but I had described to me in detail a white man who became profoundly fluent in spoken Chinese without learning written Chinese by becoming a male prostitute. He was a good-looking white man, and
I think a new career opportunity just opened up. Hope my wife didn't hear that.
I was told the story in some detail. He really disliked the brain damage he got from alcohol. He was expected to stand there at a bar and chit-chat with older Chinese women. The chit-chatting was much more important than the sex. Some of these women paid him and never had sex with them. I don't know what percentage.
This is getting a little bit awkward. I've done a lot of chit-chatting with older Chinese women. Maybe they were expecting something and I didn't realize it. And the fact that he's mentioning, I was standing at a bar, the person was standing at a bar chit-chatting with older Chinese women. I've done that. And it was literally just language practice for me.
But I got the impression many of the women just wanted to go on a date with him. And, they didn't actually want to have sex, but some of them did. And he would have to drink.
By the way, what the hell does any of this have to do with Latin?
Drink huge amounts of alcohol while talking to these women in Chinese for hours and hours. Like that's his job every day, is to chit-chat with women. He's a male prostitute, Okay. Now, in some ways, this guy's life is unbelievably bleak, and his story ends sadly. I won't get into it. I never met him. I knew a guy who was personal friends with him. That's who I got.
So you've never met this guy, and you're just relaying his personal story to the entire world? Imagine if that guy just randomly stumbled across your video. He'd be like, I don't even know this guy. He's telling my story. The story
from about this guy. Okay, as bleak and terrible as his life may be, wow, what a network, what a constellation of language exchange partners he has, coming to his life and reinforcing and helping him learn the language in every way except.
Okay, new methodology dropped. Become a prostitute.
Reading and writing, right? These women really are very motivated to talk to him. Trust me, you can live anywhere in the world. For me, China and Taiwan are really notable examples. You can live in China or you can live in Taiwan and nobody wants to talk to your ass.
This is probably what I did wrong with Esperanto. Like, I should have just found all those Esperanto women at the pub and just, hit on them. And then I could have made money, man. Like, that would have been so profitable. In fact, I do have a funny story about this. Long before I met my wife, I picked up a girl who thought I was teaching her Spanish at the pub. I was actually just teaching her Esperanto because I remember she mentioned in a conversation that she always wanted to go to Spain. I'm like, oh yeah, I speak Spanish, type of thing. Because I knew by that point she didn't speak Spanish, and I was worming my way into the conversation type of thing. And it amazingly worked. By the end of the night, she knew a bunch of set phrases in Esperanto. Had no idea it wasn't Spanish.
You go to the grocery store. They sell you the groceries. They say, do you have a discount card to pay for that? You say yes. You say no. That's it. Nobody's helping you learn Chinese. And you can be in a situation where you are offering to do language exchange, where you are offering to work for free. You are offering to teach people English, if only they will participate with you in practicing your Chinese. And you can be in a situation where you are offering to pay money. You're offering to pay $100 a day or $100 an hour, and still nobody will help you study or practice Chinese. And let me just add.
I have no idea where this is going. There seems to be completely undirected rant.
Most of these guys, because it's sometimes it's women or men, but stereotypically a white man who goes and gets a Chinese girlfriend. A lot of you guys end up sleeping with someone who's not going to help you learn the language. I mean, a certain type of self-disciplined intellectual woman will.
And this is why I always say, don't try and pick up people Like, if you're learning a language, don't go intentionally try to date someone of that language. It just seems silly to me and limiting in a lot of ways because, you know, a relationship is a lot more than just a language. I learned Chinese years after I met my wife.
Is that who you're fucking? We can flip it around and ask the same, but women dating men, and there are different kinds of gender dynamics involved there. Are you, even if it's just one relationship, you're not a prostitute, there's one person you're sleeping with, are they teaching language? Okay, as bleak a picture as I've just painted for you there, how does that compare to your situation? What kind of colleagues you can have learning Latin?
Wait, is that his argument? Because you can just randomly, you know, go to bars, chat with women and stuff like that, and you can't do that with Latin? You know, the funny thing is, I actually know people, and I'm going to use Esperanto as an example again, who have literally got together due to Esperanto, which is a language that's not spoken in any country, by the way. It's a constructed language with probably a speaker base either equivalent or smaller to that of Latin in the modern world. Literally gotten together over the language, had children, those children speak the language. There's like entire groups that are like devoted to this stuff. I know there's Latin meetups, like... What I don't get what he's trying to get at here.
You have none of those options learning Latin. You can't prostitute yourself. You can't do it. It is a totally dead language.
Okay, guys, if you can't prostitute yourself in the language, stop learning it. It's completely useless to you. Unless you're willing to be a prostitute, drop it. Okay? What the hell are you doing? Sorry, Tokipana people. Unless you open up the first, you know, Toma Unpa, we're not doing things.
And the type of person who learns this language, they are the worst kind of larper. If you don't know the term in English, larping, larper, live action role play. Now, there's no...
Also, what's wrong with larpers? Some of the coolest people I've ever met have been larpers.
Better comparison than Latin and Esperanto.
Bitch. It's on!
Disrespect. Okay? Well, the other comparison I'm doing is, you know, Latin to other ancient languages like Pali, Sanskrit, and classical Chinese. You know, with Latin, people begin with an abstract ideal. And then they try to summon up a desire. They try to contrive a desire they don't really have in pursuit of that ideal.
He's just making up bullshit right now. Okay. Let's talk about why I was interested in Latin. Literally because I like the idea of being able to look into what the daily life of someone, you know, 1,000, 2,000 years ago was. I wanted to basically just see what it was like to, you know, see what people complained about back then, what interests they had, those types of things. It's like looking into another culture, but one that's lost in time.
If you're talking about a white man, 21 years old, who decides to start learning Japanese,
he's got a real fascination with these, like, white people.
The desire is real, right? And the desire may be based on watching Japanese pornography, and it may be based on...
Bruh. Bruh, what's with all the porn? Like, come on. Come on.
I'm watching Japanese cartoons, anime, manga, etc., right?
What are the people in my Discord doing to me? Are you guys trying to make me, like, have a heart attack over here? You know this video is going to be completely demonetized. Like, 100%. Obviously, I'm not going to make my $2 off of this one. What are you guys doing to me?
It may be based on Japanese video. 21-year-old man, 21-year-old white European man who wants to learn Japanese. The desire is real. He starts with a desire, and then he will contrive an ideal to justify the desire. 21-year-old white man in Europe who decides to learn Latin.
What is this ideal crap he keeps talking about? Like... maybe some people have some, like, preconceived ideal and that's why they go learn the language. Like, for example, maybe someone goes learn Greenlandic because they've got, like, some preconceived ideal about how the Vikings were and they want to live that type of Viking lifestyle. But the vast majority of people don't do that. Okay, like, I've learned Chinese literally because it's my family language. I learned Esperanto literally because I wanted to see if I could learn a language. I learned Tokipona because I wanted to sound like a bloody pigeon.
Begins with an ideal and then tries to contrive the desire. A stereotypical ideologue who learns Esperanto or teaches Esperanto is left-wing or even communist, believes in world peace and a kind of stereotypical left-wing hippie view of racism and anti-racism.
Oh my god, this is so funny. He's like, he's a left-winger? Bros, I'm not left-wing. I'm like center-right, especially when it comes to like economic things. I'm pretty hard right when it comes to the economics. Left-wing, I'm more, I would say I'm kind of in the field where it's like, as long as it doesn't bother me or impact on me, that's fine.
We had people trying to teach Esperanto in Cambodia to Cambodians. Could someone Google that?
Yeah, there's a good Cambodian Esperanto movement.
Ask me right now, is there still an Esperanto school in Cambodia?
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with people teaching Esperanto in Cambodia?
You could also Google Vientiane, the capital city of Laos. Okay. Left-wing ideologues, LARPing.
This is actually a funny thing, is because I'm not left-wing, like hard left-wing. I do cop a lot of flack about that on YouTube from like Esperanto speakers who don't like me, talking about certain things or doing certain things. I don't give a shit. Okay? And realistically, I hate how people politicize languages. You're going to get in every single language community people of every like political belief. People come to languages for many different reasons. People come to Esperanto maybe due to, the ideological reasons that he spoke about, or they might come due to the fact it's in their family. They might come because it's part of their religious belief system. Hell, they might come because they simply wanted to make friends and some dude who spoke Esperanto was interesting enough to them and they wanted to be friends with them.
They are the people studying Esperanto, teaching Esperanto. They are the spirit of Esperanto, if you like. Okay? I got bad news for you. The ideologues attached to Latin, they're not just right-wing.
Oh, finally. Now we're getting back to Latin. What do you mean they're not just right-wing? What?
They're quite literally neo-Nazis.
If I could roll my eyes further in the back of my head, I literally would. Because a lot of the people who learn Esperanto learn Latin. So what are they? Hard left? Hard right? What's going on here, bro? I don't see what's going on. So according to this guy, I am a hard left-winger who has like this secret desire to be on the right because I haven't quite learned Latin yet.
People who are dressing up in togas on YouTube, the people who are talking about the greatness of the Roman Empire on YouTube and in podcasts, and who are saying, as this kind of ideological commitment, that you ought to get back to studying Latin, they are 21st century neo-Nazis.
Well, according to this guy, everyone's a neo-Nazi if they love their culture. So if someone wants to dress up in Roman regalia, rock around, with the swords and stuff, I think that's freaking cool as. And when I went to China, I met with tons of people who were simply super interested in their own culture. They're rocking around, with the Chinese, I forget how to say it in English, but the full outfits, they got the swords and all that type of stuff. Like, they love their culture. So why is it when someone loves their culture, they want to dress up in the gear of their culture historically? It's bad, especially if it's white people. Who gives a crap if someone loves this stuff? Like, I don't get this, hatred towards anything of white history, which this guy apparently has right now. Like, I love, looking at Roman history. I love looking at Chinese history. Man, I'm pretty much fascinated in history. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm, studying the history of Cherokee because I love the written system of it.
And I would say to a much greater extent than the people doing Esperanto are left-wingers or communists. There's some flexibility there, some lassitude there.
I know more communists who speak English and don't speak Esperanto than speak Esperanto.
And to a much greater extent than the people studying Sanskrit or Pali are ideologically committed to a revival of Buddhism or a revival of Hinduism, respectively. You'll find a lot of different weird eccentrics, in that bunch. Maybe the only thing I could compare Latin to this way is the study of Tibetan. If you talk to white people who are learning Tibetan, ancient Tibetan or modern Tibetan, they're doing a scholarly Buddhist Tibetan or modern Tibetan, wow, you are dealing with some fucking larpers. These are people who don't just believe in...
What is wrong with people being massively interested in the historical, aspects of a language, a culture and stuff like that? I don't get this. He seems to have this really deep hatred for this stuff. And he's looking at the word larpers like a negative. Why is that a negative? If anything, it seems like this guy's out here to try to stir up controversy, to try and make his YouTube channel grow.
Buddhism, they believe in Tibetanism. These are Tibetan nationalists. It's fucking crazy. And you tell me if that's left wing or right wing. That's a good example.
I wouldn't. The problem with the concept left wing and right wing is it's seen directly through the eyes of an American audience only. Those ideas of left and right wing, they don't even apply well to other Western countries. So you can clearly see that this guy lives in a bubble.
the crazy, crazy people you'll meet if you go into Tibetan as a language. Now, look, I have a hard time saying that anyone on earth is worse than the type of white person who learns Japanese. So
now he's taking shots at people learning Japanese.
People are hashtag polyglot. When you sit in the classroom with white people studying Japanese.
Oh my God, this guy. What I've learned from this guy so far is he's really interested in pornography and he's really interested in white people. Maybe this is like, everything he's saying right now might actually be internally what he's thinking for himself. It's like those closeted gays. So basically the people who will shit on the gay community constantly and they'll act as straight as possible, but deep down they're actually gay themselves.
You are looking at the dregs of our species. You are looking...
The dregs of our species? Species? Bro.
At the worst elements of humanity, and you are seeing the basest desires. Like, you're seeing them at their worst. Some people, okay, let's say a guy, he's an accountant, and he's a nice guy, and he's a good guy, 12 hours a day. But if you meet him when he's at the casino, you see the worst side of his character. You see the worst of human nature. Like, okay, he's a good guy 12 hours a day, but a certain number of hours per day or a certain number of hours...
All I've learned so far from this guy is that he hates everyone.
A week, he's at the casino, and you see another side to him. White people studying Japanese are in the same way terrifying. You are looking at the worst aspects of the worst people.
I know there's like a bunch of people who are learning or have learned Japanese in my comments section. They're going to have a field day with this statement. And also, his comments are turned off. If you want to rage, my comments are always open.
Inhumanity. I really mean that. Well, I've got to tell you something. Latinists, people who choose to learn Latin, are even worse.
Okay, this should be renamed from why you should not study Latin in 2023 to why white people interested in pornography should not be studying any language apart from Chinese. So far, he hasn't said anything bad about Chinese.
You are either talking about traditional Catholic fascists.
Everyone's catching strays right now. Boom! Take out the guy interested in Japanese over there. Boom! Got you, you dirty Esperanto speaker. Boom! Take out you friggin' Catholics who's still standing. I'll take you out. If you're white, you're in trouble, my man.
So note, you're saying traditional Catholic fascists, right? So it's a continuous tradition that includes people like Mussolini. It includes people like the dictator Franco in Spain, right? There's a tradition of Catholic Catholicism that continues to this day. They are either that kind of fascist or...
I feel like I am everything that he hates, okay? I have studied a bit of Japanese. I speak Esperanto. I've studied a bit of Latin. Bro, I've looked into Cherokee. I'm probably his worst nightmare. When he lays down at night and he closes his eyes, he fears the Evildea hovering above him, just sitting there looking down upon him going, I am the white.
They are neo-Nazis, and the emphasis has to be on neo.
The only thing is I'm not Catholic. My dad's a Wiccan, so I don't know. Are Wiccans bad? They haven't copped any strays yet.
Don't mean they are traditional Nazis who actually practice what Adolf Hitler preached. These are people with very eccentric, very new ideas, but they are fascist ideas. They're a different kind of fascism, right? Those are the people who dominate Latin.
Realistically, what I'm thinking so far is this guy, he's taking shots at people on the left and he's taking shots at people on the right based in American politics to try and make himself look like a centralist. He's not. He's an extremist. This dude is like the most extreme of the extreme.
Okay, so here's one person you're examining, and they are obsessed with getting the pronunciation and emphasis correct when they recite Catholic prayer in Latin. That's what they're trying to impress upon you as a student. That's what they're trying to do with themselves. They believe there's something magical about singing a traditional Catholic song in Latin perfectly, getting the emphasis on the right syllable, getting the emphasis on the right syllable, is what he's saying. You know, that they have some kind of supernatural belief that this is their way to reach out and touch the mind of God. I hate to tell you this, people. The God of Israel did not give a fuck about Latin. The language of the God of Israel, the God in your Bible, was not Latin. Like, well, these people don't accept that. These are people who are still living.
Okay, I'm not religious, but I've studied religions because I'm fascinated in the fact that people can believe in religion and I can't. And I'm always curious, why do I not have this type of thinking like the vast majority of people do? So I've studied religions. And basically, Latin established its importance due to the fact that that's when it became the language of the Roman Empire. And Latin was the language of the Roman Empire at the time. And basically, the vast majority of the beliefs were codified in Latin. And then also, you know, the religious laws were codified in Latin. That's why Latin established itself as being such an important language. Yes, it was not the language of the Bible, but it was still a highly important language of that time frame.
With. We have a question here about the scholars of the Middle Ages. These are people who are struggling to revive the darkness of the Dark Ages, at least in their own minds.
Here also shows ignorance of history. People talk about the Dark Ages. This here is actually an outdated concept. The Dark Ages was not a Dark Age. There was tons of things that were happening. It was just not unified like it had previously been.
At least in their own hearts. This is one type of person you can be. You know, okay, now let's contrast. Over here is a guy, and what he's talking about is masculinity, what it means to be a man, and the Roman spirit, and the Roman military, and conquest, and what were the causes of the decadence and the decline and fall of Rome. You know, okay, that's another school. Now, a big difference between the 21st century and the 19th century.
Look, people will take things and manipulate it to fit whatever their perceived interests are. And those people that he's talking about actually don't really learn Latin. Like, they may learn like a couple of little things here and there, but the people who like to take and distort history for their own needs, they never actually learn it in any particular way. It reminds me of when we had the Esperanto terrorist, okay? Now, you guys probably don't know about this story, but years ago, when I was doing Esperanto videos, there was someone who basically started sending terrorist threats to different universities, shopping centers, and stuff over in America. You can find news stories about this if you want to look at it online. The guy barely spoke Esperanto. He learned like a couple of words, and then he tried to use it for his own benefits and tried to bring down, you know, Esperanto with him type of thing. And he thought it was funny. And the guy actually even took pot shots at me. There was times where I was working with the police actively to try and find this guy. Like, I was talking with the Canadian Mounted Police. And the funny thing is, it made Esperanto look negative. This guy clearly didn't know the language. The letters he was sending and the things he were writing were completely crap. In fact, someone found a thread where he was asking in a beginner's forum, how do I translate this to Esperanto? Because he literally couldn't speak the language. But he was more than willing to adopt it for his own purposes. By the way, that's not very left-wing.
This is I'm sorry, but this is actually really important. In the 19th century, a huge percentage of the people interested in Latin were homosexuals, who were trying to advance the notion that homosexuality was normal, that it shouldn't be a crime, that homosexuality wasn't just something that should be socially normal or legally normal, but that it was biologically normal. So
I don't know if that's true or not. I'm going to let the comments tell me more about that.
They were going back to these ancient Roman texts, some of which contain very explicit descriptions about gay romance, gay prostitution, all kinds of homosexual skullduggery. You know, men cheating on their wives with other men, men cheating on their boyfriends with women, you know, like the whole gamut.
I feel like this guy's trying to become like the Andrew Tate of the language world, man.
Of shenanigans, you know. We get it spelled out for us real clearly. We get all the details of the sex lives of different emperors. Some of them were straight, but a lot of them were gay or bisexual. Okay, there were a lot of homosexuals in the 19th century who were reaching out to these classical texts from ancient Rome to try to basically say, hey, I have a right to exist, right? What you will notice is that in the 21st century, these people who are studying Latin, whether they are openly neo-Nazis or not, like it may be covert, their real political agenda, for some reason, their idea of masculinity from ancient Rome is homophobic.
Okay, this is clear. He's had some type of bad experience. I don't know what it is. I've been in the Latin community long enough. Like, I don't speak Latin, but I've interacted with the Latin community long enough to know that this is complete and utter bullshit. You're going to meet, like, one fanatic here or there pretty much everywhere. Like, I've met these types of people outside of Latin. You know, the ones that will try to, you know, make everything about other races and stuff like that. This guy here He's not advancing anything in any good way. He's just taking random pot shots at different communities. He's tainting he's painting some weird ass brush across the entire community. And he literally looks like a neo-Nazi. So I don't know what the freaking hell he's on about.
Rather than homophilic, if you like, rather than embracing gayness and bisexuality, it's actively condemning it. They are instead constructing and asserting a patriarchal, heteronormative, ultimately,
You know what? I'm not even going to engage with the rest of this content because realistically, it's just he's not providing anything of value for the language community overall. At first, when I started watching this video, I thought, okay, maybe this guy's got some interesting points about Latin, overall. Realistically, he hasn't even touched on Latin. He barely touched on it. He touched on Esperanto more than Latin, or every other language basically more than Latin. So he's just sat here shitting on different languages to try and make himself look like a centralist. I've watched this guy for 20 minutes and I've watched a lot of people in my time. Like, I know a lot of people of every different, group, of the far left, of the far right, centralists, everywhere in between. I've met the whole goddamn lot. And I can tell you right now that this guy is not a centralist. He's a fanatic far left person. And why do I say that? Because obviously he's shit on the far left. It's because he doesn't see them as being far left enough to him. To him, the communists are not, they're not pure enough. So I can see clearly that he hates white people. He's got some weird ass talking points from the right that he also believes in here, with all the porn and stuff like that. And this actually reminds me of something that I've noticed a lot in society, where when people go so far left and so far right, they actually meet in the middle and they basically become the same thing. They just hate each other because they've got different labels. But at the end of the day, they're literally the same thing. This person, there's no way in hell I would recommend people go and watch and actually learn from, because he's just a fanatic and he's just out here like spitting poison against every single community I can think of. Like, he hasn't said anything good at all. The only thing he hasn't done is shit on the Chinese, which is quite funny because, like, the far left and the far right generally shit on the Chinese for different reasons, obviously. And finally, he's not even opened the feedback. His comment section on this video is completely locked. If you don't have the balls to open up your comment section and allow people to come in and debate you on the things that you're saying in your videos, then you're just overall a pretty shit human. Because, like, if I'm going to come out here and say stuff, and I say stuff and it pisses off all sorts of people, I leave my comment section open because, well, I want to allow the people who are watching this to have their say and debate it out in the comment section. So if you actually believe in the crap that you'll hear spewing online, at least open up your comment section. Freaking hell.